now that we have the login and the server is aware of the current context of who's currently logged in, there's no need to encode the user ID here to navigate to the profile. Right? So let's refactor the profile so that it doesn't need this. Okay. All right. So one of the first things we'll need to do is to revisit the configuration that navigates us to the profile, and I believe it's right here. There it is. Here's the profile. What we're going to do is that we're going to refactor this, just say profile. We want to navigate to a profile and don't want to have to encode the user ID as part of the URL. We already have that context on the server. So to do that, we're going to have to change the login controller so that instead of navigating to user and then the user ID, right, we're going to instead navigate to just profile. Right, and we don't need to tell it what the ID of the user is. Right, now this is not going to work magically. Obviously, the current profile controller assumes that you're passing the ID. Right, so let's we have for now we've broken it. Let's go back to login. Let's refresh and let's log in as Ken again. So it navigates correctly to the profile page, but notice that there is no user. Right, because again, the controller still is assuming that there's a user ID in the profile in the URL. So we have to rewrite this. Okay, so let's see how can we rewrite it. Well, what we're going to do. Well, one way that we could try, right, is that here in the profile, instead of looking up for user, we could perhaps write something in the user server that says, hey, is there anybody logged in, right? And if they are logged in, can you please send me that user, the currently logged in user? We could do that in the profile. But I suspect we're going to be doing that quite often, checking to see who's currently logged in. Notice that we don't need to do it just in the profile. We also need to do it when we navigate to the websites, when we navigate to the pages, when we navigate to the widgets. We're always going to need to know what is the current context, right? Within the websites for the current logged in user, the pages for the websites of the current logged in user. So we always need to maintain. So we're not going to put it in the profile controller. Instead, we're going to put it in a common place so we can reuse it over and over. All right. So here's how we're going to do it. Right. What we're going to do in the config, what we're going to do here is that we would like to, first of all, protect the fact that we are allowing you to navigate to the profile page, right? So that's one of the things. If you're not logged in, you shouldn't even be able to navigate to the profile page, right? It makes no sense, right? That you come into a blank profile page. So that's one of the things. And if you do come here, it should be in the context of the currently logged in user, right? So let's work on those two things. So one way to do it, right? A common way to do it is to add here a resolve attribute, right, that says the following things have to be resolved before I let you navigate to the profile page and before I let you instantiate this controller. So check to see first if these things are resolved, right? Once they are resolved, then I'll let you in. Make sense? Right? And the way we configure these things is by providing several functions that need to run some logic, right? And they all need to agree, right, that everything's resolved, everything's good. We should let them continue where they wanted to go. All right. So the way to do that, I'm gonna put here a placeholder variable, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And then the function. Here we put the function. So the function, this is the things that need to be checked. What do we need to check to see if we let them through? We need to check if they're logged in. All right, we're going to check if they're logged in. If they are logged in, we're going to vote yes, right, and then we'll let them in. Okay? So let's do that. So this is a pointer, is a reference to an existing function that is going to vote yes or no on whether they should let them in. And you can have any number. You can have several. Is admin or something, right? Comma. And you can put several functions. They all need to agree. Right, they all need to agree that yes, he's an admin, yes, he's logged in, yes, whatever, right, whatever logic you want to check for, right, and they all need to agree for them to let the person in, the navigation succeed. So let's implement check logged in. Oops, check logged in. So what we'd like to be able to do is the only person who can answer this question whether there is a current user logged in is the server, right? Again, we don't want to rely on the client maintaining this state, right? We already have it on the server. So presumably we should be able to go back to the server using our trusty user service, right? And ask it, logged in, or check logged in. So we're going to go out to the server, and the server is going to respond yes or no, and this is going to return a promise. Okay, this is going to return a promise. If we have several functions, check logged in, whether they're admin, whether they're a particular role, whether they're whatever, right? Several of these functions, they're all going to return promises. Okay, and the resolve mechanism here is going to wait on all of them to resolve. Once they all resolve, then the navigation is allowed to continue. Okay, so all of them are returning promises. So let's implement this. Let's implement it. We need to go out back to the server. So we have here. Let's see right here. Check logged in. Well, the client is going to go out to the server. So we are on the client side right now. And we're going to, no argument, right? We have no state. The server has a state. So we're going to go out to the server. And the URL is going to be maybe check logged in. Okay. And this can be a get. This could be a return HTTP .get. It's going to go out to the URL. And it's going to come back function response and return response data. Actually, we do need to unroll it because this is going to have the object. Right? This is going to have the object, the user object of the user that's currently logged in, or some flag telling us that nope, there's nobody logged in. Right? It could be null or 0 or empty string, something that we can all agree that represents that there is no current user logged in. All right, so on the server side, we need to be able to answer this question. Right? We're going to implement that on the server side. So up here, we're going to listen for that incoming get. Okay, and it's going to be handled by a local function of the same name. So let's implement that right next to login. Oops, function. And this receives the request and the response. Now remember, right? See how the user was available in the request, right? Notice that as long as that same user is in the session, right? I have access to this user, wherever I have a request. If there is a user in the request, it'll be available here, right? So I could just check to see if request.user is not null, right? Or if it has a valid value, right? And then respond with a 200 or respond. I could just echo back the current user. Well, just like the user object was added by Passport. Passport adds quite a few syntactic sugar functions that encapsulate this validation, right? Whether somebody's authenticated, whether they're in a particular role, so one of those functions is request dot is authenticated. Again, that's a function that was added by the Passport library, and it's a convenience method, right? That checks to see if the user is valid, whether it hasn't timed out, whether checks quite a few things to tell us that indeed yes, there is a person who's authenticated, and so we can just use that convenience function. So if the request is authenticated, meaning somebody is logged in, then we're going to respond, send back the JSON object request.user. Yes.
Wait, how does Passport override the request? Like, don't you just require it? And then, I'm just confused like how Passport's able to just override like the request and not when we initialize it and it's using the local strategy, right? It
it adds to the request object. Yeah, it adds to the request object. And actually, you can do do the same thing as well. You can add any number of functions or objects in the request yourself as well. Okay, so if the user doesn't exist, here we're going to respond with something that we can agree both on the client side and on the server side, right? That is a flag value, right? That represents the fact that there is no currently logged in user, right? I'm going to use that sending back just the string 0. You could choose whatever you want, right? As long as we can agree on both sides, right? How do we represent the fact that there is no currently logged in user? Right? So if we go back to the server, if we go back to the client, this is going to go back to the client. This is either going to be the object, the user, the currently logged in user, or 0, right? And on the controller, right? The controller, in the config, right? This is going to return either a promise that will come back with a user object or 0. Okay, notice that we're not handling the 0 just yet. Right? Let's be optimistic, and the user is going to come back. Right? Let's assume that the user is coming back. All right, so let's restart the server because we changed something on the server side, and let's go back here. So let's refresh and log in again. Actually, we need to register as someone else. Poe and Poe, as in Poe Dameron. Oh, that didn't work. Okay. We registered. Right. Notice that the register still wants to go to user. See that? It still wants to go to user. That's fine. And that mapping doesn't exist anymore. We can try log in. I think Poe was created. Let's log in. All right. So I navigated to the profile successfully. Let's see. Did it come back from the network? Log in. Profile. Did it go out to logged in? I don't think it did. Let me try. Let me see again. Let's clear this out. Profile. Render user in the profile controller. Yeah, but I don't see it going to check if there's anybody logged in. Let's see. This is network. Flickr. Blah, 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 blah. Did I do the resolve? I did add the resolve. Yes. Check logged in. It is coming in here. We put a breakpoint there. This is the source, and this is the config, and let's put a breakpoint there. Okay, so it is trying to go in there. Let's step in. Oops. I don't think we want that. Oh, I know what's going on. Notice that I'm using the user service, right? But I never injected it. I never injected the user service. So let's try that again. Okay, so now we're there. Now let's step in. Okay, now we're in the service. Right? Hopefully now it's going to generate the query to the server, and it's going to come back with a data. There it is. There's Poe, right? That came back from the server. So let's continue. All right. So now it goes to the profile. We reached the profile. But we still don't have the ID. It's the controller is still assuming that we're passing the ID, right? The user ID. Right? We no longer have it. We never passed it, but at least it's navigating to the correct place. Right? Let's see if we log in. Notice that. Okay, can I go to the profile page? All right, it's going out. Response. So somebody's currently logged in, right? So what we want to be able to do now is that whatever these functions return as a promise, right? In this case, it's returning the user object. What happens is that this placeholder variable that I put here, okay? Whatever the promise returns, in our case is the user object, right? Is bound to that variable. It's bound to that variable. And that variable now becomes an injectable object, right? That can be added as a dependency in any controller, right? Anybody who asks by name, just like a service, right? It declares it, and it can be added as a dependency. So, for instance, if we go to the profile controller, let's go to a profile controller. Undergraduate, views, user, and we go to the profile controller. I can now add QWE, right? That weird name that I chose over there, as a dependency here. Right? It's going to be injected. So if I revisit my profile page, and I put a breakpoint, let's see, where are we? If I put a breakpoint in the profile controller, I'm going to put a breakpoint right there, and I refresh. Then remove that. Okay, I don't need that anymore. Let's continue. Notice that I'm now in the profile controller. If I hover over the QWE, notice that I have that object. Right, that's the object that came from the server. Right, it's now injectable, as a dependency, and anywhere I can ask it by name. Right, again using the idea of inversion of control. Right. So there's no need for me for the user ID, right? I don't need the user ID anymore. I don't need to go fetch anything at the server, right? It's coming back as a resolved object, right? So the controller can be rewritten so that I don't need the user ID, right? I have it here. Right? I can say, actually, let me rename this. QW is such a silly name. So it could be maybe current user. I just didn't want to give it away right away. So here's current user. There it is. So it's being injected here, and that is the user. Right? I can say that user ID, if you want it, if you must, is the current user dot underscore ID. Right? Not that we need it. I don't believe, but there it is. If you need the user ID, I don't need to fetch the user service anymore. Right? To find the user, I still want to be able to render the user. So I could write maybe an init function that is going to be invoked right away. And then we can call the render user and pass the current user object. Yes? Right? So if we refresh this, okay, notice that I have my PO back, right? My user object, without the need of encoding the user ID in the URL. Yes?
Is it better to do it like indirect using functions, or can you just say how that user equals current user?
What do you mean?
Like you defined it so you could render the user by using the function render user.
Oh, okay,
What
yeah.
the user is doing is assigning user.
Right, meaning, could I just have done model.user equal current user, right? Well, in this case, since we already have it and we didn't have to go fetch it or anything, this might make more sense. Yep. Yeah. This probably is an overkill of needing this, right? This was as in I needed to maybe go fetch it and then reuse this re-rendering, right? Depending on where it was navigating from. But yeah, in this case, probably an overkill. Yeah. So there it is. So notice that I no longer have this, and I'm refreshing. No? I'm refreshing. Typically, right? If I didn't have the state encoded in the URL, right? Angular just didn't know what to do, right? But now we have it encoded on the server. Yes.
In the config, what does like the resolve expect from all these variables in order to like stop it? Like you said, like restrict access.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that next. Right. So notice that profile. I'm navigating to profile. I can go anywhere else, right? I can go back home, I guess, right? And then I can type profile, and it still remembers that Po is the one who's logged in, right? Which makes sense. But let's see what would happen if I log out, right? It should stop me from navigating here, right? So let's work on logout next, right? So that we can demonstrate what happens, right? So let's do that now. So let's work on logout.